The rain poured down in heavy sheets that night, tapping like frantic fingers on the roof of the gas station. Emma and Josh were just trying to get home, exhausted from a long weekend. They stopped for a quick refill, thinking nothing of it. But what happened next, they could never have prepared for. Out of nowhere, a large German shepherd, soaked to the bone, trembling and desperate, sprinted across the lot. Before either of them could react, the dog leapt straight into their car through the open back door. He didn't growl, he didn't bark, he just sat there, his chest rising fast, staring at them with the kind of eyes that told a story no words could explain. Josh tried coaxing him out, but the dog wouldn't move. In fact, every time they reached for him, he pressed himself deeper into the seat, as if he belonged there. He wasn't just seeking shelter. He wanted something else, something urgent. "Josh," Emma whispered, her voice shaking, I think he's trying to tell us something." They didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything, not just for them, but for someone they hadn't even met yet. The highway stretched endlessly in front of them, slick and glistening under the relentless downpour. It was one of those nights where every mile felt heavier than the last. Emma leaned her head against the window, watching the blur of neon lights and passing trucks, while Josh tightened his grip on the steering wheel. They had been on the road for hours, returning from a family visit that left them both emotionally drained and quiet. When the low fuel light blinked on, they sighed in unison and took the next exit, leading them to a nearly deserted gas station on the edge of town. The storm was louder here, pounding against the tin awning. They thought it would be a simple, forgettable stop, but fate had other plans. Emma and Josh had been married for 6 years, but lately, the silence between them felt heavier than the rain outside. It wasn't anger. It wasn't distance. It was emptiness. They had been trying for years to start a family, only to face heartbreak after heartbreak. Miscarriages, failed adoption applications, and the endless waiting that gnawed at their hope. Every time they passed a park or saw a car seat in someone else's vehicle, it was like a quiet reminder of what they didn't have. Josh had always been the practical one, holding things together, but even he was beginning to feel the cracks. Emma, with her gentle heart, tried to hide her sadness behind small smiles. But tonight, as they drove home, she stared at the back seat, a space they once imagined would be filled with a child's laughter. Instead, it was just empty and quiet. When the storm hit, forcing them to pull into that gas station, Emma was lost in thought, holding on to the idea that maybe their lives needed something, someone, to remind them what love and purpose truly felt like. Little did she know that someone was about to come crashing into their world, quite literally. As Josh stepped out to pump the gas, Emma stayed inside the car, watching the rain run down the windshield in crooked little rivers. That's when she saw him, standing just beyond the glow of the gas station lights. A German shepherd. He was drenched, his fur clinging to his thin frame, but his stance was alert, almost regal, like a soldier on watch. His ears twitched with every sound, his amber eyes fixed on the people coming and going. At first, Emma thought he might belong to someone. Maybe he was just waiting for his owner to return, but no one seemed to notice him. In fact, most people avoided looking his way. He looked forgotten. Then, their eyes met. For a split second, she swore she saw something in him. Fear, yes, but also determination, like he had chosen her out of everyone else in that parking lot. "Josh," she said softly, "there's a dog out there. He looks lost." Josh glanced over his shoulder, sighing. "We can't take in every stray we see, Em." But neither of them knew that this dog wasn't just a stray. He had a mission. Josh had just finished pumping gas when Emma cracked the back door open to toss in a bag of snacks and their travel blanket. She barely had the door open 2 seconds when a streak of wet first shot out of the rain. The German shepherd launched himself straight into their back seat. No hesitation, no sniffing first. He landed hard, shook water everywhere, then curled into the corner like he'd been riding with them for years. Emma gasped, "Oh my hi. Hey, buddy." Josh rushed around, hands out. "Whoa, no, out. Sorry, pal. You can't just." The dog braced, front paws planted, muscles locked. When Josh tried to guide him out, he pressed deeper into the upholstery and gave a low, warning rumble. Not mean, just serious. Not leaving. Up close, they saw it. Soaked fur, ribs showing, and a frayed piece of old rope still looped loosely around his neck. Rainwater dripped from his ears. He looked exhausted and determined. Then he did something odd. Instead of watching them, he stared out the rear window, toward the dark road behind the station. He whined, pawed the glass, then looked back at Emma like, "Well, are we going?" This wasn't a dog looking for shelter. He was asking for a ride, with a purpose. The rain was slowing to a mist now, but the night still felt heavy with tension. Josh rubbed the back of his neck, glancing between Emma and the stubborn shepherd in their back seat. "This is insane," he muttered. "We can't just drive off with someone else's dog." Emma's eyes softened as she looked at the dog. "Josh, look at him. He's not lost. He's desperate. I can feel it." The shepherd let out a sharp whine, pawing at the rear window again, his gaze fixed on that same shadowed road behind the station. He turned his head, staring at Emma with a look that was almost human, as if begging them to trust him. "Maybe he's leading us somewhere," Emma said, her voice low but certain. "What if someone's hurt? Or—" She stopped herself, not wanting to imagine darker scenarios. Josh sighed, glancing at his watch. "We're already late getting home. And now you want to follow a dog into the middle of nowhere." But Emma's mind was made up. She gently stroked the dog's wet fur. "If it was you out there, wouldn't you hope someone cared enough to follow?" Josh looked at her, then at the shepherd, whose tail gave one hopeful wag. "Fine," Josh muttered, sliding into the driver's seat. "But if we get murdered in the woods, this is your fault." The tires hissed against the wet pavement as Josh pulled out of the gas station, headlights cutting through the darkness. The German shepherd sat upright in the back seat now, as if he were their silent navigator. His ears twitched with every turn, and each time they slowed, he would whine or shift forward, pushing them onward. Emma kept glancing back at him. "It's like he knows exactly where we're going," she whispered. Josh gripped the steering wheel. "Or we're just driving in circles for some mystery dog quest." But deep down, even he felt it, this wasn't random. The storm had left the country roads slick and eerie. Trees leaned over like dark giants, their wet branches glistening in the beam of the headlights. Every mile they drove seemed to grow quieter, emptier, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Then, after about 15 minutes, the dog suddenly stood, balancing his front paws on the edge of the window. He let out a sharp bark and whipped his head toward a narrow dirt trail barely visible through the rain-soaked brush. "You've got to be kidding me," Josh muttered. "You want us to go in there?" The shepherd barked again, tail stiff with urgency. Emma placed a hand on Josh's arm. "I think this is it. We have to trust him." Josh slowed the car to a crawl, staring at the dark, narrow path. It wasn't even a proper road, just a muddy track cutting between the trees. "This is a terrible idea," he muttered, but something about the dog's intensity made him shift into gear and turn. The car jolted as the tires hit uneven ground. Rainwater pooled in dips along the path, and branches scraped the sides of the vehicle. The German shepherd didn't care. He was leaning forward, eyes glued to the shadows ahead. Then, just as they rounded a bend, Emma gasped. Josh stopped the car. In the glow of the headlights, something glinted in the mud, a collar. It was frayed, broken, and still damp. Next to it was a torn piece of cloth, pale pink, caught on a thorn bush. Emma's stomach dropped. The shepherd let out a low, mournful whine, pawing at the door as if begging them to keep moving. "Someone's been here," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. She picked up the collar through the open window, feeling the cold metal tag. It was too worn to read clearly, but it was proof. This dog had belonged to someone. Josh swallowed hard. "All right, buddy," he said, looking at the shepherd. "Show us where." The dog barked once, sharp and clear, then led them deeper down the trail. The muddy trail narrowed until it was barely wide enough for the car. Josh slowed to a crawl, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The German shepherd grew more restless with every passing second, his paws shifting, ears alert, eyes locked on the shadows ahead. Then, the trees opened up to reveal a clearing, and at the far edge of that clearing was a steep drop. Josh slammed the brakes. The car skidded slightly before coming to a halt just a few yards from the cliffside. Rainwater trickled down the rocky edge, disappearing into the darkness below. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God, Josh, look!" Near the edge of the cliff, tangled in roots and branches, was a torn backpack. It looked as if it had been thrown or had slid down from somewhere above. Scattered near it were pieces of paper and a shoe, half buried in mud. The German shepherd started barking, loud, insistent barks that echoed through the night. He leapt from the car, rushing toward the cliff. His tail was stiff, his body tense. Emma's instincts screamed at her, "Someone's down there." Josh got out, shining his phone flashlight over the edge. The beam caught something, movement. A faint voice carried up through the stormy silence. "Help, please." For a moment, neither Emma nor Josh moved. The voice was faint, barely audible over the wind, but it was real. "Did you hear that?" Emma's voice cracked, her pulse racing. Josh leaned closer to the cliff's edge, shining his light down again. The beam revealed a young woman, clinging desperately to a narrow ledge halfway down the drop. Her clothes were torn, her arms scratched, and she looked utterly exhausted. "Help me," she called out again, her voice trembling with fear. Emma gasped and immediately grabbed Josh's arm. "We have to do something. She's going to fall." The German shepherd barked furiously, pacing back and forth near the edge as if urging them to hurry. It suddenly became clear he had led them here. He wasn't lost. He was trying to save her. Josh's mind spun. The cliffside was slick with rain. Any wrong move could mean disaster. "There's no easy way down," he muttered, scanning the area for anything that could be used as a rope or anchor. Emma's eyes locked on the backpack lying nearby. She rushed over, searching its contents, but it was mostly torn snacks and papers, nothing useful. "Josh, we can't just stand here," she shouted. The young woman below cried out again, her hands slipping slightly on the wet rock. The clock was ticking. They had to act fast. Josh's mind raced. He scanned the surrounding area, looking for anything that could be used as a lifeline. The car headlights barely reached the cliff's edge, casting long, eerie shadows across the clearing. "Wait, the travel blanket," Emma said suddenly, rushing back to the car. She pulled out the thick woven blanket they always carried on road trips. "If we tie this to the rope on the dog's neck, we might have enough length to reach her." Josh looked uncertain. "That rope is barely holding together as it is. It's all we've got," Emma snapped, her voice fierce and trembling. Josh didn't argue further. They tied the frayed rope around the blanket as tightly as they could. He braced himself against a tree trunk near the edge while Emma carefully lowered the makeshift line down the cliff. "Grab it," Emma shouted, leaning forward as far as she dared. "Hold on tight." The woman below looked up, fear etched in every line of her face. She reached for the blanket, her fingers brushing against it, but a chunk of wet earth crumbled away beneath her feet, sending rocks tumbling into the darkness. "Don't let go," Emma yelled, her knuckles white as she held the blanket with all her strength. The shepherd barked wildly, pacing at the edge as if he understood the stakes. The woman's fingers finally gripped the blanket, but the moment Josh felt her weight pull against it, he knew they were in trouble. The frayed rope creaked, threads snapping one by one. "Josh, it's slipping," Emma cried, her voice high with panic. "Hold on." Josh dug his heels into the mud, bracing against the tree, but the ground was slick and his boots began to slide. The shepherd barked louder, almost frantic, as if trying to push them to act faster. "Ma'am, you have to climb. Pull yourself up now," Josh shouted down. The woman gritted her teeth, using what little strength she had to hoist herself upward. Every pull caused the blanket to strain, every second feeling like it could be the last. A sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, and for a heart-stopping moment, the blanket slipped from Josh's hands. "No!" Emma lunged, grabbing it just in time, her arms screaming from the effort. I've got it. I've got it. Come on, almost there, Josh yelled, his voice cracking under the pressure. Finally, with one last desperate pull, the woman's hand reached over the edge, grasping at wet grass. Josh and Emma grabbed her arms, hauling her up onto solid ground. She collapsed in a heap, sobbing, shaking, her face pale with shock. The shepherd rushed over, nuzzling her, tail wagging furiously. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Josh, she's his owner. The woman wrapped her arms around the German shepherd, clutching him as if she would never let go again. He licked her face furiously, whining with joy, his tail thumping against the muddy ground. It was as if the fear and exhaustion in his eyes had melted away the second he saw her. Emma knelt beside them, her own voice thick with emotion. Is he yours? The woman nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. His name is Ranger, she whispered, hugging him tighter. I thought I'd never see him again. Josh crouched down, still catching his breath. What happened? How did you end up down there? She wiped her face, taking a deep breath. I was hiking earlier today. Ranger got spooked and ran off the trail. I went after him, and I slipped down that ledge. I've been stuck there for hours, calling for help. He must have gone to find someone. He found you. Emma's chest tightened at the thought. He led us right here. He wouldn't take no for an answer. The woman looked at them, her eyes wide with gratitude. You saved my life. Both of you. I don't know how to thank you. Ranger sat proudly beside her, as if he understood what he had done. His amber eyes, once desperate, now glowed with warmth and loyalty. Josh gave a small smile. I think Ranger's the real hero here. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, but the forest was still soaked and heavy with mist. Josh helped the woman to her feet, noticing how weak and unsteady she was after hours of being stranded. Come on, he said softly. Let's get you somewhere warm and safe. Emma wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, the same blanket that had just saved her life. Ranger stayed close to her side, nudging her leg as if reassuring her that everything was all right now. They carefully made their way back to the car, the muddy trail making every step a challenge. Josh offered his hand to steady her as she climbed into the back seat, with Ranger hopping in right beside her and curling up protectively against her lap. As Josh started the car, Emma turned around from the passenger seat, smiling gently at the woman. You're safe now. Do you have family nearby we can call? The woman nodded weakly. My brother lives just a few miles from here. I can give you directions. The ride back through the dark, winding roads was quiet, but filled with a strange warmth. Ranger rested his head on her lap, his eyes closing as though finally allowing himself to relax. Josh glanced in the rearview mirror. You know, I wasn't planning on playing rescue hero tonight. Emma smiled softly. Sometimes we don't choose the moments that matter. They choose us. By the time they reached the woman's brother's house, the storm had finally passed. The moon peeked through the thinning clouds, casting a silvery glow over the quiet countryside. Josh pulled into the gravel driveway, the tires crunching softly as the engine hummed to a stop. The front door swung open almost immediately. A tall man, clearly worried, rushed out onto the porch. Mia, he shouted, running down the steps as the woman, now wrapped in Emma's blanket, stepped out of the car. David, she whispered, her voice breaking. He enveloped her in a tight hug, tears of relief streaming down his face. Ranger barked happily, circling them as if celebrating the reunion he had fought so hard for. The man knelt to pat the German shepherd, his voice trembling. You found her, boy. You saved her. Mia turned back to Emma and Josh, her eyes wet with gratitude. I don't know how I can ever thank you both. If you hadn't listened to him, she glanced at Ranger, I might still be stuck there, or worse. Emma shook her head, smiling softly. You don't need to thank us. We just followed where the real hero led. Josh smirked, giving Ranger a small salute. Good job, buddy. Before they left, Mia hugged them both tightly. You've given me my life back tonight. I won't forget it. Ever. Emma and Josh exchanged a glance. This night had changed something in them too. The hum of the car filled the silence as they drove back down the winding country road. The storm had left everything glistening, trees dripping with rain, puddles shimmering under the headlights. Neither Emma nor Josh spoke at first, both lost in the whirlwind of the night's events. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "You know, if Ranger hadn't jumped into our car, Mia wouldn't be alive right now." Her voice was soft, almost as if she couldn't believe it herself. Josh nodded slowly. "I thought he was just some stray looking for a warm place to sleep. Turns out, he was on a mission to save her." He let out a small laugh, shaking his head. It's like he knew who to ask for help. Emma turned to look at him. "Would you have believed this if someone told you yesterday?" "Not a chance," Josh said with a faint smile. "But tonight, I think I learned something. Sometimes, the smallest signs, like a dog refusing to leave, are actually the biggest calls for help." Emma rested her head against the window, watching raindrops trail down the glass. "And sometimes, helping others ends up changing us too." Josh glanced at her, thoughtful. "I think Ranger reminded me what loyalty looks like, and what it means to never give up on the people we love." They both smiled quietly, the car rolling smoothly toward home, carrying with it a story they'd never forget. As they neared the city lights, Emma turned to Josh and said, "You realize we just lived through something that feels like a movie, right?" Josh chuckled, but his expression softened. "Yeah, but it was real. A real reminder that sometimes doing the right thing starts with just paying attention. We could have ignored Ranger. We could have driven off. But what if we had?" Emma didn't answer, but the silence said everything. Moments later, Josh pulled into their driveway. The car engine went quiet, and for the first time all night, the world felt still. Emma took a deep breath. "That woman will always remember Ranger as her hero, but I think we'll remember him as the reason we didn't give up." Josh smiled faintly. "Yeah, and maybe that's the kind of story the world needs more of. Proof that kindness and courage still exist, even in the most unexpected places." As they stepped inside, Emma glanced back at the empty street, half expecting Ranger to be there, standing watch. She whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "I hope he knows how much he mattered tonight." In that quiet moment, a moral formed, unspoken yet clear. Sometimes the most unlikely encounters are the ones that teach us the greatest lessons about loyalty, about hope, and about how a single act of compassion can save a life. The night faded, but the story of Ranger, the hero who wouldn't give up, was one they'd carry forever.